How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
Okay, to tell me all the things.
I am launching a podcast, which I'm very excited about. So, smart people, right? CEOs, executives, artists, celebrities, whatever it may be, are known for what they're known for. Or all of us are, right? Like I live in LA, like to surf and ski and I work in comms, right? But also, maybe I go down rabbit holes about wine every once in a while, or like I'm really interested in what it takes to become a som. So, the premise is to like connect smart people with experts in the things that you might be interested in that like nobody knows about, that you just haven't had time to explore.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can stop and answer any questions.
How do you have time for this? I feel like there's so many dumb things in my brain that are probably not all that interesting to other people. I was going to say fashion and styling, but it's not that I am interested in it. In fact, I'm deeply uninterested in it. It's just something that I should know about and I don't. I would like to learn more about crypto. My sense is that cryptocurrency is a scam. And yet, I understand that some smart people think that that is not the case. Finance is one of these things where we should know what to do. Why do I just panic when I think about what I'm supposed to be doing? Passive income? What is that? How do you start a restaurant?
Ooh, I love that.
I probably have a lot of food questions. I really love single malt Scotch, but I don't know enough about it.
Interesting.
And people always, because I'm a big Scotch drinker, assume that I know a lot about it. And I've never taken the time to, read a book about single malt Scotch.
So I'm going to go into a little rabbit hole of my own, find some experts in a few of these 100 options that you gave me, which I love.
I'm just rambling. I'm sorry.
So the conversation you're about to hear is one between Sarada Peri and Dr. Emma Walker. Sarada is a friend of mine, and she was for a time one of President Obama's speechwriters. And she was super interested in whiskey and really specifically Scotch. So I went down a little internet rabbit hole and found her like the best possible person I could have ever hoped to pair her with. And that is Dr. Emma Walker. Dr. Emma Walker is the master blender at Johnnie Walker. So she is like the preeminent expert on whiskey and Scotch, and the best person I could have found. Her last name is Walker, but like no relation. Total incredible coincidence that she is now master blender at Johnnie Walker, first female master blender in the brand's 200-year history. Paired them up and we got to talking about everything you might expect. So, how long does Scotch have to age? What differentiates Scotch from whiskey? What kind of barrels do you have to use? All of that. And then we talked about something I didn't expect, which is that Emma actually recommends Scotch for your espresso martinis. So those of you who love your espresso teens and have been trying to like mix in tequila into your espresso martinis, I think is super popular now, or at least it is on the West Coast. Try Scotch. I haven't tried it yet, but I trust Emma now with every cocktail I would ever have. So I'm going to try it this weekend and report back at some point on what it tastes like, but I'm sure it's delicious. I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed recording. These two women are absolutely incredible, just total gems of humans, experts in their space. And it was like so cool to be able to bring them together and have this conversation.
Audio and video.
Audio and video? What?
Mm-hmm.
You did not tell me that. I would have gotten different headphones.
You look fantastic. Hi. Okay, Emma, do you mind or Dr. Walker? Sorry, I should call you Dr.
Oh no,
Walker.
please don't call me doctor. It makes me feel like I'm in trouble. It's like when someone uses your full name.
Before we dive into whiskey and Scotch and, everything Sarada's curious about, I want to ask you, Emma, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. And I was like, what are the chances that you want to talk to President Obama's former speechwriter about whiskey? And you were like, sounds great, reach out to my PR team. So what was your reaction?
Well, I did have to Google names because I'm like, am I being set up for something?
Emma's like, am I being punked?
Is this a real thing?
I'm so happy to hear that. So I have to tell you, so I do with all of my you're both smart people on this podcast, but the smart person and you're the expert with Sarada. I did a pre-call with her, and it's just a 30-minute tell you about the podcast and let me dig into what you're curious about. And Sarada had a list like a mile long because like most smart people is extremely curious and probably finds herself down a million rabbit holes. But I think the first thing you said, Sarada, was Scotch.
Yeah.
You were like, I am such a Scotch person. And I have to say, on a personal note, that took me back. So Emma, Sarada and I,
That's
before she went on to do wonderful, incredible things at the literal White House, which is so cool, we worked at the same speechwriting firm. And I remember at like 5 o'clock on Thursdays and Fridays, you know, you could smell our coworker Mike opening up the Scotch down the hall, and that was like, it's time to close your laptop.
It's whiskey
So
time.
it's so special. It totally brought me back. So Sarada, like, I want to pivot to you. Why Scotch? Why was that the first thing that came to your mind?
First of all,
and whiskey.
I feel like I'm talking to the Tom Brady of whiskey right now. It's very exciting. I think I stumbled into it in part because I love the smell of it.
Yeah.
And it's also one of these things that you can drink. Like, you can't open up a bottle of wine and then drink an entire bottle of wine on your own. I mean, well, some people can, but you know, I could not, living alone in my apartment back then. But I did sort of I was drawn to sort of the whole scent of it. However, I was also turned off by Scotch, and actually, sadly, Emma, you're going to talk me out of this, but Johnnie Walker in particular, because I also associate Johnnie Walker in particular with, I'm Indian American, with like a subset of old Indian men who think they know a lot about Scotch and drink it with, you know, a glass full of ice and talk a lot about it, and then somehow end up denigrating women in the process. And so I just kind of have that memory too. So I have a complicated relationship with Scotch, but in that office, a lot of other people liked it too. And I will just say, I think I know that I know what I like, and I feel like I need to expand my palate. But I also just don't know anything about it. And you know how you meet people who, for example, know a lot about wine, and they're like, "Oh, it smells like, you know, tarmac and, you know, cilantro," and like, I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Like, what? And I know that exists for Scotch too, and for whiskey too, but I don't know anything about anything. I just know I like to drink it. That's all I know.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about Scotch is it's sort of wrapped around with that scent and with memory. So when you smell whiskey and you smell certain things, it immediately transports you to either when you've enjoyed that whiskey with other people, but you might pick up certain scents that, like, I'll pick up a note in some whiskies that takes me back to my grandparents' house, like sort of making apple crumble or sort of cooking with them. And that's what I love, is it's like you're tapping into your emotional core. So it's like it almost becomes layered up with your experience and your memory of everything that happens as well, which I think is quite unique. Like, whiskey it does something really special in that space.
I have so many questions, but I'll start with the basics, and then we'll get bigger. Because I also want to talk about you. So I want to do like Scotch and you. Okay. So I think that what I've always been drawn to about Scotch are the peatier Scotches, right? Mm-hmm. So and I actually picture your job to be that you just wander around the hills of Islay, like rubbing your face in peat. But so that sort of, that peatiness is something I love. And as a result, I've ended up with single malt. But what even is single malt? And why are there grain whiskeys and malt whiskeys? What is it? What?
So in the world of Scotch whisky, we've got what you call Scotch whisky regulations. So they define what we can call Scotch, where it's made, how you can process it. They define that for it to be something to be called Scotch whisky, it's got to be made in Scotland. Okay. It's got to be produced, it's got to be matured in Scotland. If it's a single malt, it has to be bottled in Scotland as well. It's got to be, the product in bottle has got to be 40% ABV or higher. You can't, if you go below 40%, it's no longer a whiskey. It becomes a spirit drink then if you do that into the bottle. We cannot add enzymes. We have to use malted barley, so that we use endogenous enzymes, so enzymes that are part of that raw material. So in other whiskey making producers, they can add an external enzyme that helps to sort of break down the starches and sugars. But in Scotland, we can't do that. It's got to be done with the raw material. You then have to mature the spirit in cask, and it has to be matured in an oak cask. The cask cannot be bigger than 700 litres. And we have to mature for a minimum of 3 years in a day for it to be called Scotch whisky. So before that point, it's a new make spirit, or it's a maturing spirit. It's not Scotch whisky. So all of those things come together. But within that group, you can have a single malt, a single grain. Now, those are whiskies that have been produced at one distillery only. So, for example, like a Lagavulin, or if we're talking about a grain whisky, we'd be talking about a Cameron Bridge. Okay. So they can only be produced at one distillery. And then, so we cannot mix our new mixed spirit. You've got to keep that separate. It then can be matured in cask anywhere in Scotland, so we can move it to a sort of central warehouse. So we have to think about as well, about risk as well. We don't want all of our spirit from one distillery on one site, because if there's something like a road closure, we can't get at that spirit until that road reopens. So we do tend to look at our warehousing and mix different spirits together in our warehouses. So you're looking at risk mitigation as well, so that we as blenders can access the spirit in 12 years' time and 25 years' time when we need to access it.
Oh my gosh, I would have never even considered that.
Now, when we're making grain whiskey, we'll use about an amount, say up to 10% of malted barley, because that's our enzymes. But we will use, we can use maize or corn. We can use other grains in there. If we're to make a blended malt, so if you think about Johnnie Walker Green Label, so that's a blended malt whiskey. That's where we use whiskies from different individual malt distilleries. So when you think of the classic picture of a Scottish distillery, you think about those copper stills. That's our malt distilleries. Yeah. So in a blended malt, you can take whiskies from different single malt distilleries and blend those together once they're matured. And that will be your blended malt. If you're doing the blended grain, you might take whiskies from Cameron Bridge, from North British, from Castbridge. If you blend those together, that's a blended grain whiskey. So it's taking whiskies from different distilleries. Now, if you're looking at a blended Scotch whiskey, that's where we can take a combination of malt whiskies and grain whiskies and blend them together to create the flavour style that we're looking for. So that most of our Johnnie Walkers are a blended Scotch whiskey, where we're looking at a combination. We're picking each and every distillery for the flavour, the aroma and the character, irregardless of whether that was a grain distillery or a malt distillery.
Can I ask a question about that? I mean, it's interesting because I feel like more students, when they study chemistry, if you told them that they could then become a whiskey chemist, people would pursue chemistry more.
I wish I'd known. I would have been much more attentive at university.
So the way you're describing this, you have to be thinking about different kinds of flavors, and it's like two elements. It's what it tastes like, but also the chemical reactions that will get you to that flavor. Are you are you thinking like a chef or like a sommelier, whatever the whiskey equivalent of that is, or are you thinking like a scientist? How do you?
I would say it's all of that. So I'm a chemist by trade. I did my degree at Edinburgh University, and I did my PhD at the University of Sheffield in organic chemistry. And that understanding of chemistry helps me to understand how we create flavour right the way through our process, from the maltings. Like, are we deciding to dry our malt with peat, or are we drying it with no peat so that you get different flavour impacts coming through? So it helps me to understand the actual chemical processes. And it also helps you to understand the maturation impact as well. So we obviously get lots of flavour through the distillery, so through how you ferment, how we mash, how you run your stills. But then you get a lot of flavour from how we extract flavour from the amazing oak casks as well. But then there's also that magic that happens in the cask, where you get those flavour compounds from the distillery and from the cask. They then react together, so you can form even more complicated and complex molecules. So I would say for us in our team, the majority of us are science backgrounds in the whiskey team. So we're a team of 12. We look after all of Diageo's Scotch portfolio. So we're responsible for the quality of all of our single malts, our single grains, our blended Scotches, so Johnnie Walker, Buchanan's, Dimple, all the whiskies you see around the world, Lagavulin, Talisker, the Singleton. Our team have their sort of fingerprints all over that. We work with the amazing craftspeople in distillation and maturation to bring that together into the bottle. But the way that we're thinking about it is the balance of science and art. So you're thinking about the sort of chemistry of flavour, how you create those aromas. So it's really interesting. I like to think about, if we're going to geek out, thinking about sort of wave theory, where if throwing stones into a pond, you can have you're making waves and they come together and they can cancel out. And that, if you think about that as a whiskey you're putting together, that's no good, because you're just losing the sort of nuance. But if you can create the waves so that they add together and make bigger and bigger waves, that's what you're sort of looking to do. You're looking to build, it's like creating a symphony or building a painting. There's lots of things that are in that you won't see, you might not be able to pick out, but they all add together to give the structure, the aroma, the texture and everything that happens in there.
It's so interesting to think about work on that kind of time horizon. Like I've never thought about work on I guess a career, but not a one project that evolves over the course of like 10, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So you mentioned earlier, and I have so many questions, and I'm sure Sarah does too, and I want to give you the questions, but I also have some questions. So you mentioned a minimum 3 years in an oak barrel, correct? And you became master blender at Johnnie Walker 3 years ago, about, right? Three
and a bit.
2?
Yeah, 3.5. I think.
Okay, so do you have your first blend as master blender coming out soon? And when is what? Tell us about the time horizon there. And then Sarada and I will have to book a flight to come taste it
to toast you
in person.
Well, I've been really lucky that we've had a few whiskies that have actually come out since I've been in the role of Johnnie Walker Master Blender. So yeah, we've had whiskies like sort of Johnnie Walker Black Ruby that's in Europe and other places around the world, and Johnnie Walker Blondes, which you might be seeing in parts of America coming through. So there are whiskies that we'll be starting to use in some of our products that I was in the role that I'm in when they started their sort of journey. But I think it's really interesting. I mean, I remember talking to my predecessor, Dr. Jim Beveridge, who was working in whiskey for about 42 years. So I was very lucky that I got to work with Jim, but also Maureen Robinson was an amazing powerhouse in Scotch whisky as well. And she actually worked in Scotch whisky for a couple of years longer than Jim. I think it was about 44 years. I'm going to get the numbers wrong, so I'm going to get some really angry phone calls off them at some point. But it was great getting to work with those guys and understanding how the whiskey flavour develops, and, you know, sort of seeing you can have a whiskey that you saw at the starting point, you know, as it was going into cask, and then seeing how it develops over the years, and seeing what changes to it. Because I think that's the key part of what we do, is understanding how maturation, how time, how the environment sort of shapes the whiskey. Because if we were to make Scotch whisky in a different country, obviously it wouldn't be Scotch, but if you were hypothetically allowed to do that, it would taste different, because a big thing that impacts the flavour is the environment that we're in. So the humidity, the temperature. But one of the things that we are lucky with is that means that we get to understand really well, because even though we do get fluctuations, we do get some lovely summers. It's beautiful at the minute. It's 19 degrees out down here in Edinburgh. But within our warehouses and when we mature our whiskies, it stays relatively sort of stable over the whole time. Whereas when I've talked to colleagues over in America and learnt more about bourbon and American whiskies, like understanding the diversity and flavour you can get from just different parts of the warehouse, like which tier it's on, what position it is in the warehouse.
Wow.
I mean, it's so interesting, but it blows my mind about how you'd actually manage that for consistency.
Right. So, you know, it sounds like when I think about especially Johnnie Walker, which is so iconic, you have these iconic blends, right? You know, and red, black, blue, etc., green. And then, you know, you come up with special ones every once in a while. But what's the balance between sort of maintaining those iconic blends, those flavors, and then innovating and trying new things, which must be super fun. But also you have to have a customer base for that too, right? So what's the balance?
That's exactly it. And I mean, a big part of our work is about that maintenance, almost like making sure that everything that we're creating from the distillery onwards has exactly the profile that you would expect. So we've got some amazingly talented colleagues that we work with across the sort of supply chain in Scotland. We've got a fantastic quality team that sit in the north of Scotland. So they do sensory assessment on every single batch of new mixed spirit that comes out of our malt distilleries. And we've got a similar in Fife, and they look at all of our grain quality as well. So we get to see what's happening at our distilleries, what's going to happen sort of flavour-wise. Knowing that and having the information that we get from maturation, that understanding of our casks, means that we know how our inventory is sort of going to behave and what's going to happen with it. For that, consistency is hugely important. So we need to make sure that we're making the right quality, we're making it over time, but also that we're doing it sustainably. We're a business, we have to think about what impact are we having on water usage. Are we doing it in the most economical way as well? Because I want to keep my job. We want to make sure our whiskies are made in such a way that people can buy them as well. So we've got to keep all of those things aligned. But we also want to innovate. If you look at the history of Johnnie Walker, we've just had 25 years anniversary of the great sort of tagline of keep walking. But if you look back at that history of Johnnie Walker with John Walker and Alexander and everything that's come after, they've always looked at innovation. They've always looked at what's next and what can we do to excite our customers, our consumers? So they've always had this sort of viewpoint of what do the consumers want? I think that's actually really interesting when we're looking at it, is that's what they've always thought about. So we're always innovating. We've always got sort of hundreds of sort of ongoing experiments. So whiskies we might have sort of tucked away, but we're also always annoying our amazing colleagues in distillation as well, saying how can we sneak innovations in so that we can have innovation liquids that we can talk about in our products, but also so we can make sure that we're doing it in the right way, so we've still got that volume and the flavour and style that we need for Blue Label, for Black Label, for Lagavulin 16, for Talisker 10. So making sure that we're getting the right liquids for those. So we all work together, and it is done in partnership. It's very much a sort of relationship of how do we do this. We also work with our global brand teams, but it is very much, I mean, we work with some amazingly clever people around the world going, what are the trends that are coming? What are the styles that we need to look at? We created a whiskey that was released in the US a few years ago. It was Johnnie Walker High Rye. And that's where we used that rye whiskey that we created at Tea and Innock and Cameron Bridge. And we made an amazing Johnnie Walker whiskey that was rye whiskey, but it was a Scotch take on rye whiskey. It was a Johnnie Walker take on rye whiskey. So when you blend it together, it was 60% rye. So we looked at what the sort of mash bill that rye whiskies tended to be made at. But we then also blend it with whiskies like Kalila and Clynelish and Cameron Bridge. So it's really looking at the Scotch flavour style that comes through as well. But it was absolutely fun. I mean, it's fantastic. And unfortunately, I can't get it in the UK at the minute. It's only in the US.
Oh, I have to pick this one up.
All right, we'll get you a bottle and we'll send it over.
Yeah, exactly. We'll send it over.
But with that, we actually made the decision that we were going to make a punt, that we were going to create some rye whiskey, because no one in the brand teams has asked us for that yet. But we knew that someone was going to come and ask us for it at a point in time. So a lot of time we'll work together with that sort of end-to-end chain, but sometimes we've just got to come up with an idea in sort of the Scotch supply chain and go, we think this is coming. And if no one asks for it specifically, we're still going to get a great flavour style that we'll be able to use in our whiskies as well.
Are there trends that you are sensing happening now, whether it's in flavors, whether it's in who's drinking, whiskey these days?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots and lots going on. It's really interesting. I've spent a lot of the last few months sort of looking at the luxury space, because we've been very much involved in sort of Johnnie Walker vaults. So we had the launch in New York a few weeks ago, where we did a sort of collaboration with Olivier Rostand from Balmain, that when we traditionally think about luxuries, I'm going back to what you were saying earlier about you get a certain picture or an image of who's going to be in that sort of luxury space and who's going to be drinking the whiskey. But what we're seeing is we're getting much more of a sort of mix in genders and a mix of ages coming through as well. Where when you're thinking about the sort of luxury space, we're not seeing that sort of luxury, like the sort of purse strings in the hands of a group of people that used to be in it, sort of getting more diversified. And I think that's really interesting. It's a great challenge for us as an industry and Johnnie Walker to have, is how do we sort of keep on top of the trends? How do we sort of look and see what's coming? Because we have to be very aware that we are based in Scotland. We're as diverse as we can be in our team. So we are a very pale team. We do like the sun. The sun doesn't always like us. But we do have a mix of ages. So we have got, if we're going to go to the labels, we go from like Gen X to Gen Z, sort of across the team.
Yeah.
So we try and reflect as much as you can sort of consumers that we have. We've got a mix in genders as well. One of the great ways that we get to have insights into that world and what's happening out in the great bars and different countries is through Diageo's World Class. So there's a cocktail competition that we have that's held. So we have people that come together from different parts of the different areas of the world. So there'll be a competition within country where it's different bartenders competing against each other. And then the best of that competition is selected, then they all come together. I think this year we're in Toronto. I think a big part for us is looking at trends is just staying curious, just continue looking to see what's out there. Even using social media in that as well, seeing what's going on, what are people talking about. But again, taking that with a pinch of salt, because sometimes there's a small number of people talking very loudly. So it's true, yeah. Understanding how to pick through that as well.
That's a good point. Well, if you ever need a brown Gen X woman to be a taster, I humbly offer myself as a tribute. I'm sure you said
that'd be very interesting, because we have got an innovation we're looking at the minute that hopefully you'd be very interested in. So I need to keep you in mind for the future.
So you said that early on you were more of a PD gal.
Yeah.
and your taste has evolved. So I'm curious, how did you, I guess, what's the evolution of your relationship with whiskey? How did you even get interested in whiskey? Was it something that was part of your family and that was drunk around you? Like how does it, and I'm curious, is this, is it a Scottish sort of, is it something that people, is part of family life and home life? How does that work?
Whiskey it is part of our sort of life in Scotland and the UK. It's something that in my mind, when I was younger, you associate with weddings and different things. There's always like the sort of dram and the congratulations and different things. My name's Walker. My dad was a Walker and he was in the Royal Navy and stations in Scotland. So, of course, his nickname was Whiskey. Just because have to have that, you've got to have that continuation. There's always that originality. So I knew there was this thing called whiskey, but we didn't really drink it so much at home. My good friends that I made at university, Dave, who's my partner now, and Kenny, they big whiskey fans. So if we went out for a beer, we'd always involve whiskey. And they really enjoyed the peaty whiskey. So that's where I started on my journey. So I think my first whiskey was a Talisker 10 or a Lagavulin 16 was where we started at. Yep. And a lot of people I can't believe you started with smoky whiskey. But if you're going into trying a whiskey, like you can smell smoky whiskey and you go, that smells smoky. Excellent.
That's
I don't feel like I'm stupid. I can understand what's
Very
happening.
clear. Yes. I'm not trying to pick up tennis balls on the back end. Yeah.
Exactly. But my route into, so I was always fascinated by, when you're a kid, you sort of, even in the bathroom, just picking up like a bottle of shampoo and going, what are all these ingredients? Like I wanted to know what things meant and how things worked and how it came together. So that's sort of how I fell into
I did
chemistry.
not do that as a kid. So I think that tells me that I should not have been a chemist. I was not looking at the back of the bottle. So I'm glad to know that there are people in the world who do this because we need you.
I'm a born scientist.
Yeah.
My mum always thought it was a bit weird, but but it's all come together now.
Yeah, of course.
When I was at university, the main things, if you did chemistry, you were generally looking at pharmaceuticals, or you were looking at like oil field chemicals, because this was back in the day. But I moved back up to Fife, and I'd heard of this company called Diageo, because my partner used to work for local government in Fife. And so they had a great reputation with local government as being a great partner in the community and sort of helped worked with the sort of local government in the best way. So I was like, that for me is really important. So I was looking at Diageo for different jobs, and I saw a job advertised for a project scientist. It didn't say what I was going to be involved in, but it was in this place called Mentorship that I'd never ever heard of. So I had to do like a sort of pre-drive to figure out where it was. So it was like between Glasgow and Edinburgh. But when I turned up for the interview, it was Jim Beveridge and Maureen Robinson and Keith Law. Wow. And it was even I'm there going, I recognise some of these people. Like I've heard of these folk. And suddenly it was like, I can be a whiskey scientist. Someone should have told me, like you said earlier, someone should have told me about this. I would have got a much better grade in my degree if I'd known about this.
Women in STEM, let's go.
So my journey into whiskey has been a sort of lucky step. Like I've been very lucky, and I recognise that. I was very lucky that I got to do qualifications while I was doing that as well. So I did my diploma in distilling from the Chartered Institute of Brewing and Distilling. I did a health and safety qualification, so I looked at doing my NEBOSH, which then helped me to move into production. I was asked if I wanted to manage the quality team at Cameron Bridge Distillery and Leven Sweetened Products area. So I went from never having managed people to managing a team of about 22 people across 2 sites on shift. And they'd all worked in this field longer than I had as well. So it was definitely a baptism of fire, but it was absolutely brilliant, and got to understand a lot more about bringing that theoretical world into practice as well. I then got the opportunity to go and work in malt distilling. So I actually managed a distillery for a year. So I managed Nakando Distillery, which is just down the road from Cardew and right on the banks of the Spey, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was stunning. I realised anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So you learn very quickly how to deal with breakages, things shutting down, how to manage that, but also how to keep on making the right quality and different things. I was then given the opportunity to manage the whiskey team. So I was then managing my peers, so everyone in the team apart from Jim. So I was managing my old managers, which was an interesting step as well, and managing my friends. So we did that for a year to cover someone's secondment. Then I was working with Jim on strategic and sort of technical projects about how do we look into the future of Scotch? How do we want to be making whiskey and whiskey in the future. And then was asked to interview for the role of Johnnie Walker Master Blender. And I still can't believe that they offered it to me. I'm still worried that they'll realise that they've made a terrible mistake. So I would definitely say
They definitely haven't. Yeah, they definitely have not, and they know that you look at the back of shampoo bottles now. So I think that they were like, this is the one. This is our girl.
One thing I'm curious about is I cannot I know that, for example, cask strength, you know, if it's in a bourbon cask versus a sherry cask or whatever, that the flavor is supposed to be different. And I don't feel like my palate is refined enough to even know that, although I think if I focused, maybe it would be. But in your job, you and your team, I imagine you're tasting so many different blends. And how do you like, does your palate ever get tired or not able to taste the differences?
So a lot of what we do is actually by nose, because our nose is even more powerful than our sort of palate. So we do most of our work by sensory, by nose. And once we sort of winnow things down, so, you know, if we're creating a new innovation, we'll look at different prototypes, we'll look at different ideas. And it's once you start to get down to a sort of small number of whiskies, that's when you'll start looking at a bit more at the palate, at the taste, at the texture. We also tend to reduce our whiskies down to 23% ABV when you're doing sensory. So if we're looking to sign off a batch of whiskey, what we want to do is we'll look at it as it is as well, but we'll then look at it at the reduced strength. So there's certain compounds that we don't want to be in the whiskey. So when you're going through the distillery process, you're creating esters and acids and loads of beautiful flavour. You're also creating sulphurs through the process. Now, some of those, in some of our distilleries, you want that. If you think about Mortlach, some of those sulphurs give like the sort of meaty, complex flavours.
Yeah.
But they can also give us off notes that we don't want. And then the maturation process, they're removed by the sort of char on the inside of the barrel. So if we're looking to sort of sign off a batch of whiskey, we'll take it down to 23% because sulphur is more hydrophobic. So if you add more water, it pushes the sulphurs up to the top, makes them almost, you can pick them up easier. So
you reduce the ABV as your that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's no really idea. Interesting. And again, it ties in, like whenever I have conversations with amazing cocktail makers, it's really interesting talking about dilution and mixing, because all these different things do different things to the sort of palate and the aromas as well. So yeah, next time you're at a really good bar, talk to the cocktail person and talk to them about texture and about dilutions, about micelles and how they mix and that, because there's so many interesting things going on in the glass.
Has that changed how you feel about putting ice or water in your scotch?
I would always advise people to drink the whiskey how they want it. So try it sort of as it comes from the bottle. So you give it a try, but never be scared about putting water in or adding ice or having it in a great cocktail or highball as well. One of my favourite treats is trying some amazing Blue Label cocktails. There's some fantastic Blue Label cocktails, or even a Lagavulin 16 Smoky Cokey. It's absolutely fantastic, and it really upsets some people as well. But I think for me, it's always about that curiosity of seeing what happens to the flavour. So what's the process that you're doing? How does that change it? So if I'm at home and I'm enjoying, like, say, a whiskey or a Boilermaker, like on a Friday, and I just want to sit, I want to relax, I just want to watch something on the TV, I'm going to have my whiskey on ice. I like how it thickens the texture. I'm not always looking to sort of explore and deep dive into all the flavours that are there. I'm looking to sort of enjoy and relax with the whiskey. If I'm out and I'm trying different whiskies, I'll drink very small measures, but I might try them at at the bottle strength just to sort of explore it. But you always want to add a bit of water as well to see what does that change. Because as we talked about, those different solubilities makes different flavours sort of come up to the forefront and changes the texture. So it's really interesting to try it. And again, if you're working with a great bartender, you ask them to advise on what they would recommend as well. Because you want to take their advice because they're great at what they do. But I've forgotten where we started off in the conversation.
No, that was great. Do you ever think about, you know how we think about wine pairs with food?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about, Scotch pairing with food, or are they separate?
I want more people. I'm passionate about. I want more people to think about that. And I think one of the whiskies that we looked at in the Blue Label space a few years ago, we looked at Johnnie Walker Blue Label Elusive Umami. So we're really lucky to work with Chef Kobayashi, who's like a Michelin-starred Japanese chef in Paris. So I think he's the first non-French chef to get a Michelin star in Paris. Like, the man is a genius. He is absolutely amazing. So we worked to create Elusive Umami together, which was fantastic. So we took whiskies, we created a whiskey. So he spoke to myself and my colleague George Harper about what umami is, what does it mean, how he thinks about it when he's building a menu and when he's building a dish. And so that helped us to really understand more in depth about what umami is, what does it mean. And the thing that always stuck with us when he was talking was umami means deliciousness to him. It's like when you take a bite of something and you want to take another bite, you want to try it again. That's almost a sort of key to umami. It can be about different flavours and different textures, but the big part of it is deliciousness. So we sort of created a whiskey with him that almost reflected how he talked about when he would get up in the morning in Japan and walk sort of on the side of the mountain, you know, sort of thinking about some of the green notes, the earthy notes, and then that becomes sweeter and fresher, but then you get into... So we worked with him to create this. And it was also created, so him and his amazing team created a series of dishes that went with this, and that was the experience. So you had the whiskey, you had these amazing dishes. And what I loved was him being very open about this, going, he'd never thought about pairing whiskey with food. But this opened his eyes up, but also opened our eyes up a lot more. So it was great being able to think about a world of flavour with someone that was a flavour genius, but had a different perspective on it. And what I'm passionate about is, so I love curry. I love especially Indian curry. And I know that's a really bad shorthand for describing the whole continent.
No, I'll take it. That's great. Yeah.
But and genuinely, I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to yourself. Like, I am so passionate about
I believe you.
Scotch whiskey is a perfect match for Indian food.
Is it?
So you can either have it in like a sort of highball, you know, lots of ice with soda. So it's something that's sort of refreshing that helps to balance very spicy whiskies. If you think about the sweetness of Scotch whiskey and American whiskey, if you have that, it can help to balance some of the sort of spice flavours, the big flavours that are there. It is also something that's got a lot of big flavours going on. Right. So it's not going to be overwhelmed by the amazing sort of flavour profiles that you see in sort of Indian cooking as well.
So if I were going to pick a Johnnie Walker to have with an Indian meal, which one would I pick?
I mean, Johnnie Walker Black Label is so versatile. And it is one of my favourite highballs. So we've got a company in the UK called Fever Tree who make amazing mixes. And one of my favourite mixes that they do is blood orange soda. And a Johnnie Walker Black Label with blood orange soda tastes like summer. It's like, you know, those beautiful citrus orangey notes. And for me, that with like a dopiazza or a Balti, you know, where you just got that spice with sort of a smoothness to it as well, works absolutely fantastically. But again, you've also got Johnnie Walker Red Label, because it's so sort of big and punchy and there's a lot of spice in there. You're talking about a lot of distillery character. Like, that again is ideal. But we could come up with a whole menu and just pair all the different Johnnie Walkers. But it's the same with our single malts as well. Like, you could see like Singleton would be absolutely amazing with a curry, especially if we're thinking about some of the more sort of, you know, the creamy sort of fruity curries as well. Like, that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm now making myself hugely hungry.
It's only 9:15 in the morning, and I'm like, okay, what time can I have my Indian food and Scotch?
10 a.m., Tanya, 10 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. On a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing Indian breakfast, that's all.
There you go.
Totally. It's totally legit. It's true. We don't think about whiskey as something, like, I've always treated it as something that I can have before dinner or after dinner, but that you're not supposed to have it during dinner. You're supposed to have wine or water or whatever. But it's actually very liberating to think about finding a way to pair the flavors together without sacrificing either one.
Yeah. And if you think about, like, even just like a great steak where you've got like that amazing umami sort of meaty flavours and that. So if you to think about like your sort of sherry style whiskies where you've got that complexity, or even like a sort of smoky whiskey, like you think about a Lagavulin 16 as sort of a beautiful steak, like you've just got that's been sort of charred, like you've got so many things that are sort of complementing each other, but then you've also got a bit of the fruitiness in the whiskey as well, and the sort of sweetness. Like, yeah, I am just making my mouth water now.
I know, right?
It's 5:20 in the afternoon in Scotland, and so it's getting closer to tea time. So that's what's front of mind.
Yeah. It's time.
Scotch and food.
You've been in this master blender role for a few years now, and obviously your predecessor did this for a very long time. But what are your ambitions for the next 5 years for Johnnie Walker, the next 10 years? What are you imagining going forward?
There's probably different layers in there. So, I mean, Jim always had the plan to build an amazing team around him, and that's what we have. Like, our team is fantastic. So that's a key part of like, how do we keep developing that team, building their confidence so that the next Johnnie Walker Master Blender, the next Buchanan's Master Blender will come from sort of within the team as well. So how do we keep that going? How do we keep learning more and more? And one of the things that I love about Scottish whisky, and I don't know if you've read Dave Broom, he's an amazing whisky writer, and he wrote this great book called A Sense of Place. So he travelled around Scotland talking about it. And we've talked with Jim as well about Scottish whisky and about terroir. So when we've talked about this, we've all agreed that terroir doesn't mean the same thing per se in Scotch whisky for us as it does in wine. And it's more that whisky is a product of the people and the place. So a distillery creates the flavour style that it does because of the place where it is. So it's the people that are from that area that sort of built that work that distillery, that make decisions about how the distillery is going to run. But it then also it sort of starts to reflect the place as well. You get like the water supply, different things that are going on. So there's part of the reason that we are based in the middle of Scotland is because we're bringing whiskies together from all across Scotland. So when we're blending, we get to work with essentially the fingerprints, the output of all like, people from across Scotland, these places from all across Scotland. So we get to bring all of that together into one space and then send this out around the world, like this thing that is a product of the whole of Scotland. From a tiny, and it is relatively a tiny wee country. Like I was in Bogota a few years ago, and I was just laughing because I was like, the population of Scotland is smaller than the population of this city. It's weird. It just doesn't make sense. But we make this amazing product that goes out around the world and brings people together, and it's something that hopefully creates joy and creates relationships and creates conversation. I think that for me is something that we're all really proud of. So we just released recently the John Walker 52-year-old. So that was using whiskies that were laid down not in the time of the previous Master Blender, but the one before that.
Wow.
So that's what we've always got to be conscious of, is that we're working with whiskies that were created in the past. So each whiskey is almost like a little bit of time travel. It's like something that was created in the past that we're sending out about the world today. But we're creating whiskies today that people on our team may never get to work with. They're going to be used in like a generation or another generation's time. So that's what we always have to be thinking about, is what are we wanting to deliver today, but what do we want to be leaving for the next generation? What do we want to make sure that it's in the best possible place.
That's lovely.
That's incredible. I have a question for Sarada, actually. Do we know, by chance, whether President Obama is a Scotch drinker?
That is a great question. My sense is no, but I don't know. I know that he drank. The news would report that on date nights they would drink martinis, which is also the only cocktail I drink because I don't like sweet cocktails.
Martini's amazing.
Martinis are the best, and I think it's one of the reasons I was drawn to Scotch also is because I don't like sweet drinks. But that's a great question, and now I'm going to be on a mission to answer it.
You have to let us know. I'm so curious.
I will report back. If he's not, he's doing it all wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
I was going to say something that we found out recently is that a whiskey espresso martini is absolutely amazing. So I'm not an espresso martini. I'm still not mature enough to be able to drink coffee. I'm like, I will be grown up when I can manage to do that. But Johnnie Walker. So we had this when we launched Johnnie Walker Ice Chalet in America, and it was one of the serves was the espresso martini. And it was absolutely phenomenal. It's great. That's so.
Oh, that's.
I know
amazing.
it's
I'll
not
have to have
considered
that
a
with the
true
girls.
martini, but it's just something to recommend. It's a great serve.
What's your
amazing? And wait, which whiskey did you say for the espresso? I'm going to text the whole girls group chat after this and tell them for dinner next week.
So I've tried it with a Johnnie Walker Blue Label Ice Chalet, but I think that's one of the exciting things is there's a lot of different scotches, so you can play with it as well. So do you want your espresso martini to be a little bit more chocolatey, or do you can sort of play with what you have at hand? But I think a black label espresso martini would be absolutely amazing as well.
What's your, I think because my love of Scotch has been so rooted in like the Highlands and those really peaty scotches, and it feels like, as you said, the terroir is so specific.
Yeah.
What's your take on whiskeys from other countries, Japanese whiskey or Irish whiskey or?
I think they're amazing. I think for me, the world of whiskey is fascinating. I think it's absolutely fascinating. And I love that whiskey is growing in popularity around the world. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I do always joke, Glenn, that, people can try different whiskies. Then they'll come back to the one true spirit of Scotch whiskey. I was very lucky that last year I was invited by the IWSC, the International Wines and Spirits competition, to come to the US. I was in Kentucky doing judging for American whiskies. So I got to try a huge range of different whiskies. I got to meet some amazing craftspeople that are creating American whiskies, that are writing about American whiskies. So it's absolutely fascinating. So I think we want the world to enjoy whiskey. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love that you can almost see that sort of community sort of in the world of whiskey. And each and every whiskey does its own individual thing as well, because it reflects the people and the place where it's made. This is taking people's craftsmanship, their artistry, and putting it into a glass for you to enjoy. And it's magic. It's absolutely amazing. But yeah, as long as they come back to Scotch eventually, it's all good.
We're all working our way there, Oh, that's beautiful. That's amazing. Wow, I wish it weren't 9:30 in the morning. Just itching to get done with my day then. Incredible. And I know, Sarada, you're very interested in Scotch, and we've had this whole wonderful conversation, but I also want to note that, in my conversation with you, and then also when I was doing my pre-call with Alvin, we were talking about both of your love for music. And Sarada's partner is still a musician, I believe, Sarada?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I just love as well, for me, a lot of time that whiskey and music are just tied up together so intrinsically. Like, I'll associate certain whiskies with certain bands because I was having that whiskey when I saw like anything from the Proclaimers to Young Fathers.
Yeah.
It's all tied together. And I just think it's fantastic. It's a great way of thinking about the world.
It is. Does
What does
Edinburgh
your partner
have a
play?
good? Oh, he's the front man of a rock band, so he plays guitar and sings. And I mean, now we have
I still
kids,
want
we
to
have
ask now, but I don't know if I'm allowed. You've got to tell me offline.
Oh yeah, I'll send you. They're called Kingsley Flood. I'll send you their stuff.
I have heard of them.
Oh yeah,
Very good.
fun. But Edinburgh, I assume, has a pretty great music scene.
It's pretty good. There's been some challenges, as there are in lots of different parts of different cities that have grown up. So I think there was a lot more music venues even a few years ago, but a lot of some of those have disappeared through COVID. Also through interesting, like, people moving to areas and then where you've had traditional music venues, and then not enjoying the venue that they're living nearby. So that has had some downward influences on some of the music that's available in Edinburgh, but there's a great musical family here, and lots of very small venues as well. At the minute, we've got the Leith Jazz Festival. So I live in the north of Edinburgh, so even if we just open the windows, we can hear what's going on in the sort of community around us, which is fantastic. Cool. But it's an amazing music scene in Glasgow as well, but also sort of around Scotland. So if we travel, we try and see. Whenever we travel across Scotland, we try and go and visit distilleries, even though we're on holiday. But we also try and find sort of local music as well that's happening. So next week we're going up towards Auchterarder, the sort of northwest coast of Scotland. So we've managed to find a sort of local whiskey and music festival that's happening up there. So it wasn't planned, but we've managed to fall into the right company when we're on holiday. So I can't wait.
when you travel and you go to these distilleries, even though you're on vacation, which I love, just tell you the testament to how much you love your work. Do you mention who you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you tell them?
I do. Sometimes there will be recognition, and sometimes I might have met the folk as well at the distilleries, because where we've been to like whiskey shows, so where I might have been asked to go to like London Whiskey Show to sort of help present, or so you get to meet a lot of sort of people from across the industry. Or we've got the Edinburgh Royal Mile Whiskies. They do the Whisky Fringe during August in Edinburgh as well. So you get to know a lot of the people that sort of work at different distilleries. Yeah. So a lot of time you already know some of the people that are there. My partner takes he takes great enjoyment in telling people who I am. I try and keep it on the down low, but he absolutely loves to drop me in it at some point.
That's really funny. That's great.
But if we're going to Isla, I tend to I'll book my tickets under like the sort of work email address and that as well, because on Isla it's such a small community that everyone knows who you are by the time you step off the plane or the boat. So they're all going to know exactly who's on the island at any one point anyway. So it's better not to hide it.
You know, I hate the question that I'm sure all of us get sometimes of like, what's it like to be a woman in your industry? But I am curious.
Yes.
Is the whiskey industry and the spirits industry in general, distillery, is it a male-dominated industry? And what have you had any unusual experiences of now being at the top of your game, or has it been nothing?
My experience at Diageo has always been very positive, and I know that's not the case for everyone in the industry. But when I joined, I worked for two amazing women. So Caroline Martin, so she'd spent about over 35 years working in the sort of spirits industry and in whiskey. I talked about Maureen Robinson. So for me, it's not really been front of my mind. And we've got a high proportion of like our distillery managers are women. And also if you look at so in the management roles, we've got a lot of women are involved. In our bottling halls, there's a large number of women. We've got women that are now joining the teams at our cooperages and our coppersmiths, which is absolutely fantastic. We're seeing more and more women into like engineering and that. We are getting more and more women into operations. So traditionally in the warehousing, it was very sort of male dominated, but we're seeing more and more of that changing. So I think it's not something that I've personally have perceived as being a sort of blocker in any way. And as I say, the team's always been sort of roughly sort of 50-50 male to female. I've had great mentors of both sexes across my time. People that have really pushed me and challenged me and made me apply for things before I would ever have thought that was ready to do it.
Yeah.
So I'd say mentors cross bullies, but in a very positive way. But it is really interesting what we talked about earlier, where that perception of who drinks whiskey, and who's involved, I think, it's improving and it's getting a lot better, but it's still a challenge. And that's one of the things that we actually do at Johnnie Walker Princess Street, so like our visitor centre that we have there now, is we're trying to break the myths that people think, like that you should enjoy it should be single malt only, and it should be, in front of a fireplace, and you need to have an amazing beard and a cigar, and you can never have whiskey and cocktails and all. So it's trying to, and that part of it is who drinks whiskey. And what we see there is you're actually getting an amazing mix of genders that we get, and also ages that are going through. So I think we are seeing changes. I have had people question why I'm ordering a whiskey and I shouldn't be drinking I shouldn't be getting a Lagavulin, and that's not for girls. And I'm like, I just need to keep this controlled. I can't say the things that I want to say.
They said that to you of all people? That's insane.
Well, I don't think they knew who I was, but I definitely didn't want to go in with do you know who I am? That's not a good way to start. Oh my god! But so I think there's still work to do, but I think we need to do it across the board. So I think companies like Diageo and other Scotch producers, we need to be more open about who's involved in making the whiskey, and we need to make it just more normalise it more. Yeah. I still remember back when I was at university and I went to the Royal Society of Chemistry, like the headquarters in London and Billington House. And when you walked in, there's all these beautiful pictures, like oil paintings, but it was of all these very serious, older white men with a lot of facial hair, and you're like, I don't really feel like I belong. And that's something that we've talked about a lot since I moved into the role. It's like, if you can see someone doing it, then you can imagine yourself in that role. Now, I don't think that everyone always realises that even just something as simple as that change, and seeing someone else doing that can open it up to people as well. And I don't think that I'd really thought about that. When I moved into the position, I was very clear that I wanted to be I'm the next Johnnie Walker Master Blender. I'm not the headline to be the first female Johnnie Walker Master Blender, because I didn't want people to think, she just got the job because it's woke, because we have to have a woman in the role. Like, I wanted to get the job. I was up against my colleagues for the role, and I wanted people to realise that I got the job because I was the right match for it at that point in time. But as we've moved through it, and people do keep on asking about it, but as I've talked to people from Diageo around the world, I have had people from I'm trying to remember my acronyms now, from Central America and the Caribbean. Like, I had this lovely gentleman who burst into tears when I met him. because he was like, he was just like, he was so proud. He said he was so proud when I moved into the role, and he went home and told his daughters about it. And he was just overwhelmed. And I was like, it was only when I started hearing from people, you're like, oh, this is a huge thing. This is a big thing. It's and I need to stop thinking about it and that it's just for me. This is like for lots of different people for lots of different reasons. Yeah. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we appreciate everyone that's making Scotch whisky and making whisky around the world, because there's amazing teams, there's amazing craftspeople. And I'm very lucky that I get the job of coming and talking about the great work that hundreds and thousands of people are doing. And that's what hopefully I'm trying to represent, is that it's amazing craftspeople. There's a massive team of people that are all so proud and so dedicated to making this amazing spirit that goes out around the world.
Shout out to all of them, and I love you for nodding to all of them. I think that's incredible, and testament again to your leadership. Before we close out, is there anything else you wanted to ask, or anything, Emma, that you wanted to leave us with? I do want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you and all of that. So please be sure to share that. But any closing thoughts for us?
What I want people to take away is Scotch whisky is for everyone. As there's a whole world of flavour. There's a whiskey for everyone out there, so just to enjoy it and try different whiskies and talk to great bartenders who are going to steer you in a good way, and just be curious about everything that you do, whether it's whiskey, whether just everything you do. Just stay curious and keep learning more.
Yeah. Well, thank you for plugging curiosity, because that's the whole purpose here. That was the perfect way to close. You're doing my job for me.
And thank you for answering all of my dumb questions.
Oh no, they're amazing. We need to keep in touch. I've got so many things that I'm going to send you. I'll send you papers and everything.
I'm so excited.
I'll connect you guys via email, so that you can share the music, and then I want to hear what whiskey you pair with her husband's band and all of that. That's
and my mom's cooking, like it's a whole thing.
Yes,
sounds
amazing.
Exactly.
When I started this podcast, someone asked me a really great question. He said, would you still do this even if nobody listened to it? And my answer was like, yes, unequivocally, absolutely no questions. I would do this even if not a single soul listened to this podcast. This project has been such a joy for me. I look forward to recording every episode, to doing the research, to bringing together two people who just wouldn't otherwise meet. It's been just something really, really special. If you did enjoy listening and you do want to share it, that would just be an added bonus. Give it a follow, share, drop your comments and questions, review. We are Smart People Get Curious everywhere, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. If you have someone you'd like to see on the show, please let me know. If you have a topic you want to suggest for one of our guests, please let me know. In the meantime, stay curious. Big thanks to Cameron, my amazing producer, Ruby Western, for the incredible design, and not just to the guests who join us every week, but also to their amazing EAs, executive assistants on all sides, scheduling and coordinating this podcast across multiple time zones with multiple people is no small feat. So super grateful to you.